Before you type a single character, Claude Code has already sent 33,000 tokens to the server. That's not your prompt. That's overhead you never see and always pay for. A rival agent called OpenCode does the same job for 7,000. Same task, same models, roughly a 5-fold gap. The bill starts before the work does. This is the hidden token tax. Every request you send carries a heavy preamble before your words are even read. That preamble costs money and eats your context window. On a paid plan, you pay for it. On a local model, it slows every turn. 2 agents, 2 very different bills. First, what you never see. Every message to a coding agent has 2 parts. There's the tiny bit you type, and there's the giant block the tool sends automatically. You control one, the tool controls the other, and that automatic block is where the tokens quietly disappear. Every agent sends 3 hidden payloads before your prompt. First, the system prompt. Pages of instructions telling the model how to behave. Second, the tool schemas, a full definition of every function the agent can call. Third, the environment context, your directory, your files, your project rules. Add them up, and that's your baseline. None of it is visible in your terminal. Here's a request inspector sitting between the agent and the API. Look at the request body. The user message is one short line, fix the failing test. But scroll up, and the payload above it runs for thousands of tokens. Your actual question is a rounding error. The preamble is the real cargo on every single call. You never asked for any of it. Now the baselines, side by side. Claude Code opens each request at around 33,000 tokens. OpenCode opens at around 7,000. That's roughly 4.7 times heavier before a single line of code is written. On a long session with hundreds of turns, that gap compounds into real money and a context window that fills up fast. Why is Claude Code so heavy? It's not a bug, it's a design choice. Anthropic ships a powerful, careful agent, and power has a price. Every capability it gives you has to be described to the model up front. Let's open the payload and see where the tokens go. Here's the breakdown. The behavioral system prompt alone runs several thousand tokens, coaching tone, formatting, and refusals. Tool definitions are the biggest slice, every function fully specified. Then comes get status and directory context, injected fresh each turn. Finally, the safety guardrails. Stack those 4 rows together and you land near 33,000 tokens. None of this is optional, and none of it is visible to you. This is one tool definition in JSON, a name, a description, and a parameter schema, each field with its own text. This single tool costs a few hundred tokens. Now multiply. Claude Code ships file readers, editors, shell runners, search, and more. 10 plus tools, each fully described, and the schemas alone can dominate your baseline. The model has to read all of them before it helps you. Then there's the context Claude Code injects every turn, your current working directory, a snapshot of your file tree, and your claude.md, the project instructions you wrote for the agent. The bigger your repository, the bigger this block gets. A small project is cheap. A large monorepo can push your overhead well past the baseline. It scales with your code, not your question. So how does OpenCode stay lean? It's open source, and it made different trade-offs. Instead of describing everything up front, it sends less and fetches more on demand. Same core job, editing your code, but a much lighter opening hand. Here's what it trims. OpenCode leans on 3 ideas: a shorter system prompt, fewer instructions, less repetition; a trimmed toolset, only the functions it actually needs, described tightly; and lazy context loading. It doesn't dump your whole file tree, it reads files when a task calls for them. Less upfront, more just in time. That's how 7,000 beats 33. Look at a tool definition. Every function you expose ships its full JSON schema, the name, the description, and each parameter. OpenCode keeps these lean. Shorter descriptions, fewer optional fields, tighter types. Multiply that across a dozen tools and the savings stack up fast. Fewer tighter schemas mean a smaller fixed cost on every single request you send before you type a word. OpenCode is open source and model agnostic. That matters. You aren't locked to one vendor's endpoint, pointed at Claude, GPT, or a local model. And because the code is open, you can read exactly what gets sent, then edit it. Trim the prompt, drop a tool, change a schema. A closed baseline gives you none of that. So the mechanics are clear. OpenCode sends less because it's built to send less. But numbers on a slide only matter if they hit your wallet and your workflow. Part 4. What the gap actually costs. Real dollars, real latency, real context you lose. Let's add it up. Do the math on the gap. It's roughly 26,000 tokens per request. Say you make 300 agent calls a day. That's nearly 8 million wasted input tokens every single day. At typical input pricing, that's real money leaking out. Over a full month, it compounds into a bill you could have avoided entirely. That's not a rounding error at scale. It's not only cost, A bigger preamble means the model reads more before it responds, so your first token arrives slower, and every token of overhead eats your context window. A 200,000 token window sounds huge, but 33,000 gone before you start is real estate your actual code can't use. Less room for files, history, and output. Now a fair caveat, prompt caching can soften this. If the big preamble stays identical between calls, providers can cache it and charge less for the repeat. But that only helps repeated, unchanged prefixes. Your first request pays full price, so does any cache miss, and caches expire. A smaller baseline wins in every case. Enough diagnosis. Let's make this actionable. You don't have to abandon your tool to fix the waste. You just have to see it and cut it. Part 5. What to actually do. A short checklist, a clear decision, and one mindset that keeps your bills honest. Here's the plan. 3 concrete moves. First, run your agent through a local proxy and inspect the real payload. See every token before it leaves your machine. Second, trim your Claude.md file. Every line there ships on every request. Third, disable tools you never use. Each removed schema shrinks the baseline. Measure, cut, repeat, and watch your fixed cost drop. Neither tool is wrong. They're aimed at different jobs. Claude Code shines when you want a polished, managed workflow with everything wired up for you. OpenCode shines when you want control, full transparency into the payload, and cheaper high-volume runs. Pick the managed path for convenience, the open path for efficiency. Match the tool to what you actually value. Here's the mindset to keep. Measure what you send, not just what you receive. Tokens you never noticed are still tokens you paid for. The cheapest token in any system is the one you never transmit in the first place. Every request is a bill. Read it before you sign. Waste you can see is waste you can cut. Let's tie it all together. We started with an invisible cost, opened the hood, priced the gap, and drew up a fix. Now the recap. 5 key points, numbered, the whole story in under a minute. If you remember nothing else, remember these 5. Here's everything we covered, start to finish. Point 1. Coding agents send huge invisible preambles before they ever read your prompt. System instructions, tool schemas, and context you never see. Point 2. On the exact same task, Claude Code's roughly 33,000 tokens dwarfs OpenCode's roughly 7,000. That's the same work, nearly 5 times the fixed cost paid before you type. Point 3. That overhead isn't one thing. It's tool schemas, background context, and safety guardrails all stacked together before your request even lands. Point 4. You pay for it 3 ways. Real money on every single call, extra latency while you wait for the model, and a smaller usable window left for your actual work. So which should you use? Choose Claude Code when convenience wins, a polished experience, tight ecosystem, and features that just work out of the box. Choose OpenCode when you want leanness, open source you can inspect, and cost control at volume. At scale, that 5 times lighter preamble compounds into real savings on every request. So here's the takeaway. Every coding agent charges a hidden token tax, and you pay it before you type a single word. Don't assume, measure it. Watch your own preamble. Count the tokens, and only then decide who earns your trust. Subscribe if you'd rather understand the future than pay for it.